In the year 2347, humanity had reached a point where it was no longer alone in the universe. For decades, humans had been exploring the stars, meeting alien species, and trying to find ways to live together peacefully. The Galactic Council was formed as a place where all intelligent species could come together to solve problems and avoid wars. It was supposed to be a symbol of unity, but lately, it had become anything but. Alex Carter, a tall man with sharp features and a calm voice, was one of Earth's top diplomats. He had spent years working on treaties and agreements that helped keep the fragile peace intact. His assistant, Claire Bennett, was younger but equally dedicated. She was smart, quick-thinking, and always ready to support Alex when things got tough. Together, they were Earth's best hope for maintaining its place among the stars. On this particular day, the council chamber was packed. Representatives from dozens of species filled the room, their strange shapes and colors making the space feel alive. Some looked like giant insects, others like glowing jellyfish floating in tanks of water, and still others like creatures made entirely of crystal. Despite their differences, they all shared one thing: a desire to protect their own people and resources. At the center of the debate was a topic that had caused tension for months: resources. Certain rare minerals found only in a few star systems were critical for building advanced technology. The krill, an insectoid race with shiny black exoskeletons and multiple eyes, claimed that humans were hoarding these minerals. They argued that Earth's refusal to share was unfair and selfish. Alex stood up to address the council. His voice was steady, even though he could feel the weight of everyone's gaze on him. "We understand your concerns," he began, looking directly at the Krill ambassador, "but the accusations are not accurate. Humanity has always followed the rules set by this council. We've shared what we can, but our needs are growing too. Our planet is home to billions of people who depend on these resources just as much as anyone else." Claire sat quietly beside him, her tablet glowing softly as she scrolled through data. She knew every number, every fact, and every argument they had prepared. If Alex needed backup, she would step in without hesitation. But for now, she let him speak. The Krill ambassador, a towering figure with long, spindly legs and antennae twitching angrily, leaned forward. "Your words mean nothing," it said in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "You claim to follow the rules, yet you take more than your share. You leave nothing for others. How can we trust you?" The room erupted into murmurs. Other ambassadors chimed in, some supporting the Krill, others defending Earth. Alex tried to stay calm, but frustration was starting to show on his face. He glanced at Claire, who gave him a small nod. She tapped her tablet, pulling up a holographic display that showed Earth's resource usage compared to other species. The numbers clearly showed that humans weren't taking more than their fair share. "Here are the facts," Alex said, pointing to the hologram. "Earth's consumption is within the limits agreed upon by this council. We've even reduced our mining operations in certain areas to avoid conflict. What you're accusing us of simply isn't true." But the Krill ambassador wasn't convinced. "Facts? Your facts mean nothing. You manipulate them to suit your purposes. This council cannot continue like this. Either you share more, or we will have no choice but to act." The threat hung in the air like a dark cloud. Claire felt her stomach tighten. She knew what this meant. If the Krill decided to act, it could lead to war. A war humanity wasn't ready for. Earth's military was strong, but fighting a multi-species coalition would be disastrous. Alex took a deep breath. He knew there was only one option left. "If this council refuses to listen to reason, then perhaps it's time for us to reconsider our role here," he said firmly. "Until you can treat humanity fairly, we will withdraw from these talks." The room went silent. No one had expected this. Even Claire was surprised, though she quickly masked her reaction. She knew Alex well enough to know he wouldn't make such a bold move unless he believed it was necessary. The Krill ambassador hissed loudly, a sound that sent shivers down many spines. "You think you can walk away? Fine, leave. See how far you get without our help." As Alex and Claire gathered, their things and walked out of the chamber. The murmurs turned into shouts. Some ambassadors called after them, demanding they return. Others whispered among themselves, speculating about what would happen next. Once they were outside, Claire finally spoke. "Do you think we did the right thing?" she asked, her voice low. Alex stopped and looked at her. "I don't know," he admitted. But staying there wasn't going to change anything. They weren't listening. Maybe now, without us in the way, they'll see how broken this system really is. Claire nodded slowly. She wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered in her mind. Walking away from the council was a huge risk. Without its protection, Earth could become isolated, vulnerable to attacks or economic collapse. Still, she trusted Alex's judgment. He had always been a man of integrity, and if he thought this was the best course of action, she would stand by him. Back on Earth, news of the withdrawal spread quickly. People watched live broadcasts of Alex's speech, debating whether it was heroic or reckless. Some praised him for standing up to bullies, while others criticized him for abandoning diplomacy altogether. President Laura Hayes called an emergency meeting to discuss the fallout. Meanwhile, aboard the space station Orion's Reach, where the council convened, reactions were mixed. Many species saw humanity's departure as a sign of weakness, while others secretly admired their courage. Among those watching closely was Ryan Mitchell, a young engineer tasked with maintaining the station's communication systems. Ryan wasn't part of the political drama, but he couldn't help overhearing conversations between ambassadors. One night, while repairing a malfunctioning console, he caught snippets of a private discussion. Two council aides were talking about the Krill's accusations, hinting that they hadn't come from the Krill themselves, but from someone else entirely. Curiosity got the better of Ryan. Over the next few days, he used his access to dig deeper into classified files. What he found shocked him. There was evidence suggesting that a powerful organization, operating in secret, had manipulated the Krill into making those claims. Their goal? To destabilize the council and maintain control over trade routes and technology. Ryan knew he had stumbled onto something big. But what could he do with this information? He couldn't go to the council. They were too corrupt to trust. Instead, he decided to contact Claire Bennett. The news of humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Council spread like wildfire across Earth. People gathered around screens in homes, offices, and public squares, watching replays of Alex Carter's speech. Some cheered, calling him a hero for standing up to unfair treatment. Others shook their heads, worried about what this decision might mean for Earth's future. The planet was divided, unsure whether to celebrate or mourn. President Laura Hayes held an emergency meeting with her advisors. The room was tense, filled with murmurs and worried glances. "This changes everything," she said, leaning forward on the table. "If we're no longer part of the council, how do we protect ourselves? How do we trade? How do we survive?" Alex. Carter sat at the far end of the table, his face calm but weary. He had been expecting this reaction. "We'll find a way," he said firmly. The council wasn't helping us anyway. They were using us as a scapegoat to cover their own failures. Walking away was the only choice. Claire Bennett nodded in agreement. She had spent hours analyzing the data they presented during the talks, and she knew Alex was right. Humanity wasn't being treated fairly. But deep down, she couldn't ignore the nagging worry that pulling out might have bigger consequences than anyone realized. Meanwhile, aboard the space station Orion's Reach, and things weren't much better. The council chamber was quieter now. With one less voice to argue or defend, the Krill ambassador seemed smug, as if their accusations had won them some kind of victory. Other species whispered among themselves, speculating about Earth's next move. Would they try to negotiate again, or would they isolate themselves completely? Ryan Mitchell, the young engineer who had stumbled upon the secret files, felt torn. He wanted to share what he'd discovered, but he didn't know who to trust. After days of thinking it over, he finally decided to reach out to Claire. He found her contact information buried in public records and sent her a coded message through a secure channel. "Claire Bennett," he wrote. "I think I found something important. Something that could explain why the Krill accused Earth. Can we talk? It took a few hours, but Claire eventually responded. Who is this? She asked cautiously. My name is Ryan Mitchell. I work maintenance on Orion's Reach. I overheard something suspicious. Please just hear me out. Claire hesitated. She didn't know Ryan, and trusting strangers wasn't exactly safe these days. But there was something in his tone, a mix of urgency and sincerity that made her curious. All right, she replied. Tell me what you know. Over the next few days, Ryan shared bits and pieces of what he'd uncovered. He explained how someone within the council had manipulated the Krill into making false accusations against Earth. This someone was tied to a shadowy organization called the Nexus Syndicate, which operated outside official channels to exploit conflicts between species for profit. Claire listened carefully, taking notes and asking questions. At Sci-Fi, first she thought Ryan might be exaggerating, but the more he revealed, the more convinced she became that he was telling the truth. Do you have proof? She asked finally. I do, Ryan said. But getting it isn't easy. It's buried deep in the Council's classified database. If I try to access it, I'll get caught. Claire thought for a moment. She knew Alex wouldn't approve of risking their lives for this, but she also knew they couldn't ignore it. If the Council really was corrupt, and if the Nexus Syndicate was pulling the strings, they needed evidence to expose them. Let me think about this, she told Ryan. I'll get back to you soon. Back on Earth, Alex was dealing with fallout from the withdrawal. World leaders bombarded him with questions, demanding answers about how humanity would survive without the Council's protection. Economists warned of trade shortages and rising prices. Military commanders prepared for potential attacks, fearing the Krill might see Earth's departure as an act of aggression. Through all of this, Claire kept quiet about Ryan's message. She wasn't sure how Alex would react, so she decided to investigate further before bringing it up. Using her access to Earth's intelligence network, she began looking into the Nexus Syndicate. What she found chilled her to the bone. The Syndicate wasn't just a group of opportunists. It was a powerful organization with ties to nearly every major species in the galaxy. Its leader, Victor Kane, was a charismatic yet ruthless figure known for manipulating governments and corporations to serve his interests. According to rumors, Kane had even orchestrated wars to weaken certain factions and seize control of valuable resources. Claire realized that exposing the Syndicate wouldn't be easy. They had too much influence, too many allies. But she also knew that keeping silent wasn't an option. Humanity needed leverage if it wanted to rejoin the galactic community, or at least avoid being destroyed by it. She decided to meet Ryan in person. Through careful planning, she arranged a secret rendezvous on Orion's Reach. Disguised as a technician, she slipped past security and met him in a secluded corner of the station. Ryan was nervous but determined. I'm glad you came, he said, handing her a small data chip. This has everything I've found so far. Names, transactions, communications, it's all here. Claire accepted the chip, her hands trembling slightly. Thank you, she said. You're taking a huge risk by doing this. I know, Ryan replied. But someone has to stand up to them. If we don't stop the Syndicate, no one will. As they parted ways, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into dangerous territory. Still, she knew they didn't have a choice. With the data chip in hand, she returned to Earth and began analyzing its contents. What she discovered was shocking. The Syndicate's reach went deeper than she'd imagined. Key members of the Council were on their payroll, including several ambassadors who had openly criticized Earth during the talks. There were recordings of private meetings where deals were struck, bribes exchanged, and plans made to destabilize entire star systems. Armed with this evidence, Claire approached Alex. At first, he was skeptical. Are you sure about this? He asked, scrolling through the files. If we go public with this, it could start a war. We can't stay silent, Claire argued. The Council betrayed us. The Syndicate manipulated them. If we don't expose the truth, nothing will change. Alex sighed, running a hand through his hair. He hated the idea of dragging humanity into another conflict, but Claire was right. Staying quiet wouldn't solve anything. All right, he said finally. We'll use this information to our advantage, but we need a plan, a good one. Together, they devised a strategy. Instead of confronting the council directly, they would reach out to neutral species, those who hadn't taken sides in the dispute. Among them was Lyra Voss, an ambassador from the aquatic Zinari race. Known for her wisdom and fairness, Lyra had always been sympathetic to Earth's position. Claire contacted Lyra through a secure channel. We have evidence of corruption within the council, she explained. We believe the Krill's accusations were fabricated by a group called the Nexus Syndicate. If we expose them, it could force the council to admit its mistakes. Lyra listened intently, her large, shimmering eyes reflecting concern. This is serious, she said after a pause. If what you say is true, then the council has failed us all. But proving it won't be easy. You'll need support from others. We understand, Claire replied. That's why we're reaching out to neutral species like yours. Will you help us? Lyra hesitated, then nodded. Yes, my people will stand with you if your evidence holds up. With Lyra's promise of support, Alex and Claire began preparing for the next phase of their plan. They knew it wouldn't be easy. The syndicate was powerful, and exposing them would come at a cost. But for the first time in weeks, they felt a glimmer of hope. On Orion's reach, Ryan continued his work, keeping an eye out for any signs of retaliation from the syndicate. He knew he was playing a dangerous game, but he couldn't turn back. Now, humanity's future depended on it. As the days passed, tensions grew both on Earth and in the stars. The galaxy braced itself for change, unaware of the storm brewing behind closed doors. For Alex, Claire, and Ryan, the fight was just beginning, but they were ready to face whatever came next. The plan to expose the Nexus Syndicate was risky, but Alex and Claire had no other choice. They knew that staying quiet would only allow the corruption to continue, leaving humanity, and countless other species, at the mercy of Victor Kane's schemes. With Lyra Voss's promise of support, they began reaching out to other neutral species, hoping to build a coalition strong enough to challenge the Council's authority. Lyra proved invaluable in this effort. Her people, the Zinari, were respected across the galaxy for their wisdom and neutrality. Through her connections, she introduced Alex and Claire to representatives from several smaller species who were tired of being pushed around by larger powers. Among them was Jorak, a reptilian ambassador with iridescent scales and a deep, rumbling voice. His species, the Vryn, lived on a distant moon and had long avoided involvement in galactic politics, but even they had felt the effects of the Syndicate's manipulation. We've seen what happens when greed takes over, Jorak said during one of their secret meetings. Our trade routes have been disrupted, our resources stolen. If you can prove the Council is corrupt, we will stand with you. Encouraged by these alliances, Alex and Claire worked tirelessly to gather more evidence against the Syndicate. Ryan continued feeding them information from Orion's reach, risking his life each time he accessed restricted files. He sent encrypted messages detailing bribes, blackmail, and even assassinations orchestrated by the Syndicate. The picture they were painting was grim, but it was also undeniable. Despite their progress, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The Syndicate wasn't stupid. Sooner or later they would realize someone was onto them. And when that happened, there was no telling how far they would go to protect their secrets. One evening, as Claire reviewed the latest batch of data, she noticed something alarming. Hidden within the files was a list of upcoming targets, species, and individuals marked for elimination. Earth's name was at the top. Her heart sank as she realized what this meant. If they didn't act quickly, humanity might not survive long enough to see justice served. She immediately called Alex. We need to move faster, she said urgently. The Syndicate knows we're onto them. They're planning attacks, not just on us, but on anyone who opposes them. Alex listened carefully, his expression darkening. Then we'll have to accelerate our timeline. We can't wait for the perfect moment anymore. We'll present our case to the neutrals now and hope they're ready to act. The next day, they arranged an emergency summit aboard a remote space station owned by the Zinari. It was small and unassuming, making it less likely to attract attention. Representatives from half a dozen species gathered in a dimly lit conference room, their faces tense with anticipation. This was the first step toward dismantling the corrupt system that had ruled the galaxy for decades. Alex stood at the head of the table, flanked by Claire and Lyra. He took a deep breath before speaking. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "What I'm about to share isn't easy to hear, but it's the truth. For years, the Galactic Council has been manipulated by a shadowy organization known as the Nexus Syndicate. Their goal is simple: control. They exploit conflicts between species to maintain power over trade routes, resources, and technology." He paused, letting his words sink in. Then he activated a holographic display, showing documents, recordings, and transaction logs provided by Ryan. The evidence was overwhelming, leaving no doubt about the Syndicate's influence. "This is why the Krill accused Earth," Claire added, stepping forward. "It wasn't their idea. It was planted by the Syndicate to create division. They wanted to isolate us so we couldn't fight back." The room erupted into murmurs. Some ambassadors looked shocked, while others seemed angry. Jorak leaned forward, his sharp eyes scanning the data. "If this is true, then the Council has betrayed us all," he growled. "But exposing them won't be easy. They have allies everywhere." "That's why we need your help," Alex said. "Together, we can force the Council to admit its mistakes and hold the Syndicate accountable. But we'll need to act fast. They already know we're onto them." Lyra nodded in agreement. "My people are prepared to assist however we can. What do you propose?" Claire stepped up again, outlining their plan. They would leak the evidence to the public, ensuring it reached every corner of the galaxy. At the same time, the neutrals would pressure the Council to investigate the Syndicate's activities. If enough species demanded answers, the Council wouldn't be able to ignore them. As the meeting drew to a close, the representatives agreed to cooperate. Each promised to rally their people and spread the word. It was a fragile alliance, but it was a start. Back on Orion's Reach, Ryan felt a mix of pride and fear. He had done everything he could to help, but he knew the Syndicate wouldn't take this lying down. Sure enough, trouble found him sooner than expected. Late one night, as he worked alone in a maintenance bay, 2 men in black uniforms approached him. They moved silently, their faces obscured by helmets. Before Ryan could react, one of them grabbed him from behind while the other injected something into his neck. The world spun, and darkness closed in. When Ryan woke up, he was tied to a chair. In a cold, empty room, a man with slicked back hair and a cruel smile stood in front of him. It was Victor Kane himself. "So," Kane said, circling Ryan slowly, "you thought you could bring me down? You're just a little cog in a very big machine. Do you really think anyone cares about what happens to you?" Ryan clenched his jaw, refusing to speak. He knew better than to give Kane the satisfaction of a reaction. Kane chuckled. "Brave, aren't you? Too bad bravery won't save you, or your friends. By the time I'm done with you, they'll wish they'd never heard of the Nexus Syndicate." Despite his fear, Ryan held on to one thought. Claire and Alex had the evidence. Even if he didn't make it out alive, the truth would still come to light. That gave him strength, even as Kane's threats grew darker. Meanwhile, Claire received a chilling message from Ryan's account. It was short and cryptic. "They know. I'm sorry." She felt her stomach drop. Something had gone wrong. Terribly wrong. "Alex, we need to hurry," she said, showing him the message. "Ryan's in trouble. If they got to him, they'll come after us next." Alex nodded grimly. "Then we don't have a choice. We release the evidence now before it's too late." With shaking hands, Claire uploaded the files to every major news network and social platform in the galaxy. Within minutes, the story exploded. Headlines screamed about corruption, betrayal, and the fall of the Galactic Council. Species that had once distrusted Earth now saw it as a victim of the same forces oppressing them. The backlash was immediate. Protesters filled the streets of alien cities, demanding accountability. Ambassadors who had taken bribes from the Syndicate scrambled to distance themselves. Even the Krill, realizing they had been used, issued a formal apology to humanity. On Earth, President Laura Hayes addressed the nation, praising Alex and Claire for their bravery. "Today we stand united with those who seek justice," she declared. "The era of corruption ends here." But victory came at a cost. When Claire and Alex tried to locate Ryan, they discovered he had vanished. All traces of him on Orion's reach had been erased. It was as if he had never existed. Claire refused to believe he was gone. "He gave us everything," she said, her voice trembling. "We owe it to him to keep fighting." Alex placed a hand on her shoulder. "We will. And when this is over, we'll find him, no matter what it takes." As the galaxy grappled with the revelations, the seeds of change began to sprout. The Council dissolved under the weight of its own failures, paving the way for a new governing body, the United Stellar Accord, USA. Led by neutral species like the Zinari, the USA promised transparency, fairness, and cooperation. For Alex and Claire, the battle was far from over. But for the first time in years, they allowed themselves to feel a glimmer of hope. The future was uncertain, but together they had taken the first step toward a brighter tomorrow. The galaxy was in chaos. News of the Nexus Syndicate's corruption spread like wildfire, sparking outrage across star systems. Protesters gathered outside embassies and council chambers, demanding justice. Some species called for immediate reforms, while others pushed to dissolve the Galactic Council entirely. Amid the turmoil, Alex and Claire worked tirelessly to ensure humanity stayed at the center of the movement for change. Despite the public outcry, Victor Kane wasn't about to let go of his power without a fight. The leader of the Nexus Syndicate had spent decades building his empire, and he wasn't going to watch it crumble without taking drastic measures. His first move was to silence those who posed the greatest threat, starting with Ryan Mitchell. Ryan woke up in a dark, damp cell aboard a hidden syndicate ship. His head throbbed and his wrists were raw from struggling against the restraints binding him to the chair. He didn't know how long he'd been there, but time seemed meaningless. In the oppressive silence, every now and then, Kane would enter the room, his cold smile sending shivers down Ryan's spine. "You've caused quite a mess," Kane said during one of these visits, leaning casually against the wall. "But don't worry, it'll all be fixed soon enough. Your little friends won't survive the week." Ryan glared at him, refusing to show fear. "You can threaten me all you want," he spat. "But the truth is out there now, you can't stop it." Kane chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh, Ryan, you really think leaking some files will bring me down? By the time anyone figures out what's happening, I'll already have control again, and well, let's just say you'll be forgotten." Though Ryan tried to stay strong, doubt crept into his mind. What if Kane was right? What if the evidence wasn't enough to stop him? He thought of Claire and Alex, wondering if they were safe. If anything happened to them because of him, he wouldn't be able to forgive himself. Back on Earth, Claire and Alex faced their own challenges. The release of the evidence had sparked widespread support, but it also made them targets. Syndicate agents began targeting Earth's communication networks, attempting to disrupt broadcasts and discredit the leaks. President Laura Hayes ordered increased security around key facilities, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the syndicate struck harder. "We need to find Ryan," Claire insisted, pacing anxiously in their makeshift command center. "If they've captured him, we have to rescue him." Alex frowned, rubbing his temples. "I understand why you feel that way, but we can't risk everything for one person. Not now. The neutrals are counting on us to keep pushing forward." Claire stopped pacing and turned to face him. "He risked his life for us for all of this. We owe him more than just turning our backs." Alex sighed, knowing she was right. But rescuing Ryan wouldn't be easy. They had no idea where he was being held, and launching a search mission could expose them to even greater danger. Still, something in Claire's determination reminded him of why they were fighting in the first place. Sometimes, doing the right thing meant taking risks, even when failure seemed likely. They decided to reach out to Lyra Voss for help. As a neutral ambassador with vast resources, she might have access to intelligence that could locate Ryan. Through a secure channel, They explained the situation and asked for her assistance. Lyra listened carefully, her shimmering eyes reflecting concern. "I'll do what I can," she promised. "My people have contacts throughout the galaxy. If anyone knows where the Syndicate is hiding, we'll find out." True to her word, Lyra mobilized her network. Within days, reports began trickling in about suspicious activity near a remote asteroid belt. A heavily guarded Syndicate vessel had been spotted docking at an abandoned mining station. It wasn't definitive proof, but it was enough to give them hope. Meanwhile, the neutrals continued rallying support for reform. Jorak and other ambassadors traveled to key star systems, urging species to join the United Stellar Accord, USA. Their message was simple. Unity was the only way to prevent another group like the Nexus Syndicate from rising to power. Slowly, but surely the coalition grew stronger. Victor Kane watched these developments with growing frustration. His attempts to discredit the leaked evidence had failed, and his allies within the council were abandoning him. Desperate to regain control, he devised a bold plan. Using advanced technology stolen from alien species, he created a weapon capable of crippling entire fleets. If he couldn't win through diplomacy, he would crush his enemies with force. Unaware of Kane's plans, Alex and Claire prepared for their most dangerous mission yet. With Lyra's guidance, they assembled a small team, including skilled pilots and engineers, to infiltrate the mining station where Ryan was believed to be held. Disguised as traders, they boarded a cargo ship and set course for the asteroid belt. As they approached the station, tension filled the air. The team reviewed their plan one last time. 2 members would disable the station's defenses while Alex and Claire searched for Ryan. If everything went smoothly, they would extract him and escape before the Syndicate realized what had happened. But nothing ever goes exactly according to plan. When they docked, the team quickly discovered that the station was far more fortified than expected. Armed guards patrolled the corridors, and surveillance drones hovered overhead. Despite these obstacles, they managed to sneak inside, relying on stealth and quick thinking to avoid detection. Claire led the way, her heart pounding as she scanned each room. Finally, they found Ryan locked in a dimly lit cell. He looked exhausted, his face pale and bruised, but relief washed over him when he saw them. "I didn't think you'd come," he whispered hoarsely. "We couldn't leave you behind," Claire replied, unlocking the door. "Can you walk?" Ryan nodded weakly, leaning on Alex for support. They retraced their steps, moving cautiously toward the exit. Just as they reached the hangar bay, alarms blared and red lights flashed. "They know we're here." One of the team members shouted. Panic set in as Syndicate troops poured into the bay. Shots rang out and the team scrambled to defend themselves. Alex shielded Claire and Ryan as they fought their way to the ship. It was chaos, bullets ricocheting, off metal walls, shouts echoing through the cavernous space. Somehow they made it aboard and launched just as reinforcements arrived. The station's turrets fired relentlessly, forcing the pilot to maneuver wildly to avoid being hit. For several harrowing minutes, it seemed like they wouldn't make it. Then, with a final burst of speed, they broke free and entered hyperspace. Once they were safe, Claire collapsed into a seat, tears streaming down her face. "We did it," she murmured, looking at Ryan. "We actually did it." Ryan smiled faintly, though pain still lingered in his eyes. "Thank you," he said softly, "for not giving up on me." Alex placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're part of this fight too. We're in this together." As the ship sped away, they knew the battle was far from over. Victor Kane was still out there, more dangerous than ever, but for now they allowed themselves a moment of relief. Against all odds, they had succeeded, and that gave them hope. After the daring rescue mission, Alex, Claire, and their team returned to Earth with Ryan safely in tow. Though battered and bruised, Ryan's spirit was unbroken. He insisted on being part of the fight against Victor Kane and the Nexus Syndicate. Despite his ordeal, the team knew they couldn't afford to rest, not while Kane still held power. Victor Kane's response to the growing resistance was swift and brutal. Using the weapon he had developed, He launched a devastating attack on a neutral species colony. The Vryn, Jorak's people, were targeted first. Their moon, once peaceful and thriving, became a wasteland after Kane's weapon disrupted its gravitational field, causing massive destruction. Thousands died, and millions more were displaced. The galaxy watched in horror as images of the devastation spread. For many, it was proof that Kane would stop at nothing to maintain control. Anger boiled over, and even species that had previously remained neutral vowed to stand against him. Jorak himself addressed the United Stellar Accord, USA, his voice trembling with grief but filled with determination. "They took everything from us," he said, his iridescent scales dull with sorrow. "But we will not bow to fear. We will fight alongside you until Kane is brought to justice." With renewed resolve, the neutrals and humanity worked together to prepare for war. Lyra Voss coordinated efforts between species, ensuring resources and strategies were shared fairly. Ships from across the galaxy began assembling near Earth, forming a united fleet ready to confront the Syndicate. Alex and Claire focused on rallying Earth's people. They traveled to cities around the world, speaking to crowds about the importance of unity. "This isn't just about us anymore," Alex told one such gathering. "It's about every species who has suffered under Kane's greed. If we don't stop him now, no one will be safe." Claire added her own words, her voice steady despite the weight of responsibility. "We've already lost so much. But giving up isn't an option. Together we can make sure Kane never hurts anyone again." While the preparations continued, Ryan threw himself into analyzing the data he had gathered before his capture. He spent hours poring over schematics and logs, searching for weaknesses in Kane's operations. His efforts paid off when he discovered something critical: the location of Kane's main headquarters. Hidden deep within an asteroid belt, the base was heavily fortified but vulnerable if attacked from multiple angles. "This is it," Ryan said, showing the others a holographic map. "If we hit them here, here, and here simultaneously, we can cripple their defenses. It won't be easy, but it's our best shot." Alex nodded, studying the map carefully. "We'll need precise coordination. Every ship, every fighter, has to know exactly what to do." The plan was risky, but there was no other choice. The fleet set out, traveling in silence to avoid detection. As they approached the asteroid belt, tension mounted. Pilots double-checked their systems, commanders reviewed strategies, and engineers prepared for the worst. When the attack began, it was chaos. The Syndicate's forces were caught off guard but quickly regrouped, launching counterattacks that tested the resolve of the United Fleet. Explosions lit up the void of space as ships clashed, weapons firing relentlessly. Amid the battle, Alex, Claire, and Ryan monitored the situation from the command ship, relaying orders and adjusting tactics as needed. "Keep pushing," Alex shouted over the comms. "We're almost through." Claire focused on keeping morale high, sending messages of encouragement to pilots and crew members. "You're doing great," she told one group. "Just a little longer." Ryan worked tirelessly to track Kane's movements. Using intercepted signals, he pinpointed the exact location of the Syndicate leader within the base. "He's in the central chamber," Ryan reported. "If we can get someone inside, we might be able to take him down directly." A small strike team volunteered for the dangerous mission. Led by a fearless pilot named Elena Torres, they slipped past enemy lines and infiltrated the base. Fighting their way through corridors filled with guards, they reached the central chamber just as Kane was preparing to escape. Elena stepped forward, her weapon trained on Kane. "It's over," she said firmly. "You're done," Kane sneered, raising his hands mockingly. "Do you really think killing me will solve anything? The Syndicate will survive without me. My legacy is already written." "It ends with you," Elena replied coldly, pulling the trigger. As Kane fell, the Syndicate's forces began to crumble. Without their leader, they lacked direction and cohesion. One by one, their ships surrendered or fled, leaving the battlefield in ruins but victorious for the United Fleet. Back on Earth, celebrations erupted as news of Kane's defeat spread. People poured into the streets, waving flags and cheering for the heroes who had risked everything to bring peace. Alex, Claire, and Ryan stood together on a balcony overlooking a crowded square, watching as fireworks lit up the night sky. "We did it," Claire said softly, tears streaming down her face. "Against all odds, we actually did it." Ryan smiled, though sadness lingered in his eyes. Too many lives were lost along the way. But maybe this will finally give everyone a chance to heal. Alex placed a hand on both their shoulders. "This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. There's still so much work to do, to rebuild, to unite, to ensure nothing like this ever happens again." Lyra Voss joined them, her shimmering form glowing faintly in the moonlight. "Your courage has inspired us all," she said. "The United Stellar Accord will honor your sacrifice and leadership. Together, we will build a future worth fighting for." As the crowd below cheered, the four of them stood silently, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time in years, hope burned brightly in their hearts. The galaxy had been torn apart by greed and corruption, but now it had a chance to come together, to heal, to grow, and to dream of a better tomorrow. Months after the fall of Victor Kane and the Nexus Syndicate, the galaxy began to heal. The scars of war were still fresh, but the United Species worked tirelessly to rebuild what had been lost. Earth played a key role in this effort, sharing its advanced technology and resources with those who needed it most. Alex, Claire, and Ryan became symbols of hope, their names spoken with admiration across star systems. The United Stellar Accord, USA, officially replaced the corrupt Galactic Council. Unlike its predecessor, the USA was built on transparency and cooperation. Each member species had an equal voice, and decisions were made through open discussions rather than secret deals. Lyra Voss was elected as the first chairperson, her wisdom and fairness earning her widespread respect. Under her leadership, the USA focused on repairing damaged colonies, establishing fair trade routes, and ensuring no species would ever again be exploited. Alex and Claire continued to serve Earth as diplomats within the USA. Their roles had changed. They were no longer fighting against corruption but building bridges between species. It was a challenging yet rewarding task. They traveled frequently, meeting with ambassadors and leaders to address lingering tensions and foster trust. Ryan, though not a diplomat by training, found his place in the new order. He joined a team of engineers tasked with developing technologies to prevent future conflicts. Using knowledge he had gained during his time uncovering the Syndicate's secrets, he helped design systems that monitored resource distribution and flagged potential imbalances before they could escalate into disputes. Despite their successes, the team couldn't forget the cost of their victory. The attack on the Vryn moon remained a painful reminder of how far Kane had been willing to go. Jorak and his people worked hard to rebuild, but the loss of so many lives left a void that could never fully be filled. To honor their memory, the USA established a memorial on the ruined moon, a shimmering structure that reflected light like the scales of the Vryn themselves. It served as both a tribute to the fallen and a warning to future generations about the dangers of greed and division. One day, Alex, Claire, and Ryan visited the memorial together. As they stood before the towering monument, they felt a mix of pride and sorrow. "We did everything we could," Alex said quietly, "but I can't help wondering if it was enough." "It has to be," Claire replied, her voice steady. "If we let doubt take over, then all of this, the sacrifices, the battles, would have been for nothing. We owe it to everyone who fought alongside us to keep moving forward." Ryan nodded in agreement. "And we honor them by making sure this never happens again. That's our job now, not just rebuilding, but protecting." Their words carried weight, and they returned to their work with renewed determination. Over time, small victories added up. Trade agreements were signed, alliances strengthened, and disputes resolved peacefully. The galaxy slowly transformed into something brighter, more united than anyone had thought possible. Years passed, and the heroes of the conflict became legends. Alex retired from diplomacy, content to spend his days writing about the lessons learned during the battle against the Syndicate. His memoirs inspired young leaders, teaching them the importance of integrity and courage. Claire took over his role, continuing to advocate for fairness and equality within the USA. She often visited schools and universities, encouraging students to pursue careers in science, diplomacy, and engineering. Ryan's contributions didn't go unnoticed either. When a newly discovered exoplanet was chosen as the site for a thriving colony, the USA named it after him, Mitchell's Legacy. A monument at the colony's center bore his name, serving as a reminder of the risks he had taken and the sacrifices he had endured. Though Ryan humbly downplayed his role, others ensured his bravery was remembered. As humanity looked toward uncharted stars, one thing was certain: the mistakes of the past wouldn't define their future. Together, they forged a path toward a brighter tomorrow, one built on understanding, resilience, and shared dreams. On Mitchell's Legacy, life flourished. Researchers, settlers, and explorers from various species came together to create a community unlike any other. The colony became a symbol of hope, proof that even the most divided societies could find common ground when they worked toward a greater purpose. Children played in parks under alien suns, learning languages and customs from their diverse neighbors. Farmers cultivated crops adapted to the planet's unique environment, while scientists studied its mysteries, eager to unlock new possibilities. At the heart of the colony stood Ryan's monument, a simple yet striking obelisk engraved with his name and the words, "Courage changes worlds." Visitors often paused to reflect, reminded of the ordinary man who had done extraordinary things. Back on Earth, celebrations marked the anniversary of the Syndicate's defeat. Fireworks lit up the skies, and speeches echoed through crowded squares. President Laura Hayes addressed the nation, her voice filled with pride. Today, we remember not just the end of tyranny, but the beginning of unity. Humanity stood tall when it mattered most, and because of that, we are stronger than ever. Alex, now an elder statesman, watched the festivities from his home. He smiled as he flipped through old photos of himself, Claire, and Ryan during their early days as diplomats. Those memories were bittersweet, but they also filled him with gratitude. "We did good," he murmured to himself. "We really did." Claire, meanwhile, stood on a stage addressing a crowd of young activists. Her message was simple: never stop asking questions. Never stop fighting for what's right. Because change starts with you. Across the galaxy, stories of heroism and sacrifice continued to inspire. The fight against the Nexus Syndicate had shown that even in the darkest times, light could prevail, as long as people refused to give up. In the end, the galaxy wasn't perfect. Conflicts still arose and challenges tested the resolve of the USA. But the foundation laid by Alex, Claire, Ryan, and countless others ensured that solutions were sought through dialogue rather than violence. Hope replaced fear, and cooperation replaced greed. As stars twinkled in the vast expanse of space, humanity, and the united species of the galaxy, looked ahead, ready to face whatever came next. Together they proved that even the smallest acts of courage could ripple outward, changing worlds and shaping destinies. And so, the story of Earth's withdrawal from the Galactic Council became more than a tale of betrayal and redemption. It became a testament to the power of unity, reminding everyone that the greatest achievements were born not from individual strength, but from collective effort.